Welcome to the only show bringing cops and the community together for some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. Welcome everybody to Black and Blue Live. How's it going? What's going on?
Everything's going really well. Hello, fam. I'm excited today. We got some heavy hitters.
Yes, heavy hitters. And one of them said he likes to get hit hard, but he a heavy hitter, so he a heavy hitter. So we appreciate everybody for coming on and showing what they got today. Before we get that, I want to make sure everybody likes and subscribes to us on all the social media platforms. I appreciate you. Just check us out on at Black and Blue US on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We all over the place. So make sure you hit us up there. So what's been going on with you, Lizzie?
Man, just transitioning as California reopens and getting used to what that looks like and adjusting to that. Still wearing my mask, as we all should, and not get complacent because we want to continue to transition to open. But that and just literally celebrating a year later that we're still here and healthy and grateful for that. So, indeed, how about you?
Yeah, I'm good too, man. I'm grateful that I'm still here and doing what I love to do is, bring a different face and different voice to our profession, law enforcement. So, people can see that. And so I'm glad for that. Real quick, I want to give condolences to, the victims and the communities down there in Atlanta and Virginia Beach and down there in Boulder as well. So they had some mass shootings in the past week. So I want to say condolences to those people. But, this has got to stop at some point. And, I don't have the answer. I don't think you got the answer, but somebody got to come up with that answer, and maybe these.
I got some answers, but they ain't listening. I got some answers. Ain't nobody listening to me though.
Okay, all right. We'll put them out there because I know our guests today. They got some opinions on that, so we'll bring them on here, and then and we'll chop it up with that. Let's get to it. So our first guest here, he is the Chief of Police in Denton, Texas. Everybody, please help us welcome in Mr. Chief Frank Dixon.
Oh, man.
How's it going, sir?
Going good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Have a great conversation today. Our next guest, he is the Chief of Police in Ferguson, Missouri. Everybody, please help us welcome in Chief Jason Armstrong.
How's it going?
Excellent. Great you could join us today. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
No doubt. Our next guest here, he is the Chief of Police out there in the great city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Everybody, please help us welcome in Chief Jeffrey Norman. Oh, what happened, kids? There they go.
Man, show me any love, Dale. Hello, Dale.
Yeah.
Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello, Chief. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Yes. And last but certainly not least, our chief here, he is with the New York Department of Administrative Citywide Services. Everybody, please help us welcome in Chief Hughie Collins.
What's going on, Dale? Elizabeth, how you doing?
Hey. Excellent. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Hopefully I got that name of your department right. We'll let you set me straight on that here in a little bit, but let me bring everybody else on here real quick. All right, so there's everybody here on the screen. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you. Thank you. So before we get into this robust conversation today, I think somebody's got the, there we go. Are we good? So before we get into this conversation real quick, I got sidetracked there, squirrel. Anyway, I'll introduce you, bring you on one by one so each of you guys can tell a little bit about yourself to the audience, everybody out here watching this. So we'll start with you, Chief Dixon. Tell everybody who you are and where you are, how long you've been in the business.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. come from spending 23 and a half years in Austin, Texas prior to coming up to Denton. I was selected as a chief of police in October 2018. Been up here just, man, edit every day, trying to make things better for everybody, police and the community. Got a lot of really good things going, just like everywhere else in the country right now with everything going on. Choosing your words and doing what you say you're going to do means everything in the world. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with y'all today and getting to know my other fellow chiefs out there.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Chief Armstrong, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you are, and how long you've been in the business.
Yes, sir. Jason Armstrong, I'm the police chief here in Ferguson, Missouri. I've been in Ferguson since 2019. July of 2019 is when I was selected to come up here to be the chief. Prior to coming to Ferguson, I worked in a city called Forest Park, Georgia, which is in the Atlanta metropolitan area. So I spent the first 17 and a half years of my career down in Georgia before coming up here to Ferguson to take on this position up here. So like everybody else, looking forward to the conversation and dialogue tonight.
All right. And Chief Norman, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in this business.
Good evening, all. I'm Chief Norman. I'm here at Milwaukee, Wisconsin, born and raised. I lived here all my life. In my 25th year with the Milwaukee Police Department, I was chosen to be the interim chief back in December 23rd of 2020. Like everyone spoke before me, it's been a rocky road. 2020, as we all know, was a year we like to forget, like to jump from 2019 just to 2021. But then again, 2021 is not faring too much better. So we're just dealing with the challenges that, keeping that policing going on and in these tough times, but really looking forward to the conversation today with you all.
All right. Thank you for joining us. And Chief Collins, same thing. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how long you've been in this business.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Q.He Collins. I'm the Chief of Police for the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services Police. Very long name. Happy to be here. I started my career in Arlington, Virginia, and then I was selected in 2016 to be the chief of NYC DCAS Police. And again, like all the other panelists, I'm so happy to be here. The other guests, I'm so happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation about how we can make this policing thing work for our community. So happy to be here.
All right. Thank you. All right. So now we got those introductions out of the way. Let's chop it up. Let's get down to this conversation. You guys are chiefs of police, right? So you guys are ones making those decisions for us, like Elizabeth and I out there in police departments. How is it like being a chief of police, first of all? I know a few of you didn't come up through the ranks. It looks like 3 of you didn't, and 1 of you did. Why don't we talk about that first real quick? Chief Dixon, why don't you talk about, and all 3 of you, all 4 of you can just jump in, what it's like coming to a department that you didn't come up in and have any history, no culture in. What was that like for you?
I tell you, no one can prepare you, one, to be a chief of police, but more importantly, no one can prepare you to walk in as an outsider into an agency as a chief. Everything you think about, we're all cops, everybody gets along because you're cops, people are going to listen to you because you're the chief. That's not at all what really happens. You're looking at walking into a different culture. You're walking into different sets of issues and challenges for that community and that department, different personalities, different training levels. I mean, across it, just the whole spectrum is completely different. And that has been very challenging. And I'll let the other chiefs speak for themselves. But that is one of the challenges that I don't think people can minimize at all. But having said that, it's great to be able to bring in fresh new ideas, fresh thoughts, different direction, changing where we're going and how we're going to get there. So, that keeps me going.
All right. Chief Armstrong or Chief Collins, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, just to add a little more context to that, if we think about it holistically, if an agency is bringing in an outside chief, 9 times out of 10 is because there are problems and issues in that organization that, people recognize need to be addressed. And one of the things that happens too often of times is when we talk about minorities in the profession, like a lot of times those are the only jobs we get as chiefs, are the problem agencies or the problem communities and stuff. And so, it's like we always have to go into an environment, that has just an overabundance of challenges and issues, that we have to come in and try to fix and try to rectify. And so that just speaks to the challenges and things that Chief Dixon was talking about of being an outside chief coming in. Whether you're coming into a Ferguson, with all the history and all the challenges that Ferguson presents, or, a place that hasn't been in mainstream media, but they're still going to have, just an equal amount of challenges and issues, that an outside chief is going to have to deal with coming in there. And so, it's really, you don't know all of the challenges before you get there. And so, like I said, it's not really something that you can prepare for. You're walking into a storm. You just don't know how bad that storm is going to be. And just hopefully, your experiences have equipped you to deal with the challenges that you're going to face in that position.
No doubt.
I can just sort of piggyback on what Chief Dixon and what Chief Armstrong said. I think they pretty much nailed it in summarizing that. Coming from outside of an agency is a unique set of challenges. You have to really deal with that. And your experiences that you've had before do sort of prepare you for the job. So you have to be really confident in what your track was and what you've done so far. But also you can't ignore when you come into an agency that there's a learning curve for you. And so you have to learn about the agency. You have to understand the culture that exists there, on top of just the regular job of being a police chief. And then you have to win the trust of the folks that you're coming into, which isn't always easy. So coming from the outside, trying to lead an organization requires a lot of patience, requires some vision casting, and requires just taking the time to understand the task ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And although Chief Norman, you came up through your ranks, I'm sure you got something that you can add to that.
Yeah, coming up through the ranks, like I always tell people, is like I worked in the mailroom and got myself to the boardroom. And with that experience, I always say that I know all the secrets, I know all the little holes. One of the things that's always a challenge for an internal candidate is will they be as honest and forthright and willing to embrace being a change agent in regards to what that particular position requires. We all know that there's things of nepotism and favoritism, things like that, and that is a big fear for a city government in regards to that. You hold the keys to the security and safety of the city, but I've always had a separation of sorts with my department life and my private life. I've always made sure that my circle was always small in regards to my public life, in regards to being an officer. So making those tough decisions is not hard. When we're dealing with issues of, as an internal candidate, are you willing to make those decisions for the greater good of the city? And definitely, I've hopefully shown that with the short time that I've been in this position. But politics is real. I think in hearing all my compadres talking, one of the things that's always the biggest challenge is dealing with personal issues. How do you get productivity, especially when you're talking about a government entity, out of individuals who have unions, have ways to go around, the requirements and rules and lawyers? It's really a chess game. And it's unfortunate that you have to play chess with this type of situation. But, being on the job for so long, so many people forget what their oath is or what their obligation is. Self-serving, want to just, what about me? What is in it for me? And trying to, again, steer that ship with those particular type of rough waters is a challenge for any, African-American or just a leader of any race in this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely.
You bring up a really good point in terms of navigating the internal infrastructures and cultures and subcultures within a department, with many of your departments being in the hotspot or close to the nexus of hotspots and current issues. What advice would you give to leadership navigating or getting compliance or collaboration within those internal structures to work together to get to the end goal? What have you found, each of you all, that have been successful in implementing those changes or bringing everyone to the table to say, all right, we'll deal with this and maybe not this yet?
So in my situation, I think a couple of things.
Everyone, I want to hear it all.
Yeah, we want to hear from
everybody. We're clearly in a time where there's a lot of things.
Go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
the big thing is, we often hear about difficult conversations, and people are often talking about between the police and the community. Just keeping it 100, the most difficult conversations are actually inside the organization, our internal conversations. Being the chief, one of the things that, I pride myself on, and I have to be just, intentionally and very committed to is having those difficult conversations with people, because I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. And for some leaders, that is a challenge. That is a challenge, because, all right, man, I had to deliver some news to somebody that I know they're not going to like, they're not going to be happy with, but I also need them to go out and be productive and to do their job. And so, there's a balancing act that comes with that in itself. But, what I rely on is my honesty can take me a lot further than trying to tell people what they want to hear. And just being open to having those difficult conversations and just really laying it on the line and allowing your employees to be a part of that conversation. It's not a one-way conversation. Just the other day, I had a very intense conversation with one of my officers. But it was a conversation that needed to be had. And we were both, getting some things out. And I'm always open for that conversation. And as a leader, as a chief, man, you have to be open for those conversations. And just because people start saying stuff that we don't want to hear, you can't pull your chief card in the middle of it and try to cut it off and be like, okay, well, now you're going too far. I'm the chief. You can't say that. That's not how this works. Right. And so you have to be open to dish it out when it's your time to dish it out, but also receive it when it's time you receive it, because, man, I need my people to be able to be open and honest with me, and I need to hear their real thoughts and where the head is at with things. So that better equips me, to move how I need to move and to address things that I need to address.
Okay.
Absolutely. I agree with what Chief Armstrong said in whole. And essentially, we can't do anything to trust we have to, our members have to be able to trust us, and we have to be able to trust them. So involving them in any process to fix a situation is key. Now, a lot of us come in with savior mentality. We're not the saviors of any department. We can't do this job by ourselves. We need every single member to buy into whatever vision we're trying to push. And the best way that I found in my particular situation is provide opportunities for people at the ground level throughout the ranks to try to get their hands on the problem, and we work together as a team. So it's a lot about team building. It's a lot about fostering opportunities and standing back and allowing people to do what they're skilled and trained to do. And a lot of that speaks to what Chief Armstrong said as well. So yeah, you just got to get in there and you got to make sure that you're involving people as much as possible. You're being transparent. We throw that word around a lot, but transparency and honesty goes a long way. And you have to be consistently those things. And just one more thing that I want to just give kudos for Chief for saying is that you got to be able to take the punches as well. You're not always going to be right, and people can smell when you're full of it. So you really want to take your time to understand that the job isn't about you, and you will have to take as much as you give in order to make this thing go.
No doubt.
So to piggyback off of the conversation that's already been said by Chief Armstrong, Chief Collins, we as leaders have to understand that our deeds must line up with our words. Legitimacy is more than just your officers dealing with the public. It's modeling behavior that you expect your people to walk that pathway. Too often, we always want to sit there and say one thing, but do another. And I mean, it's a lot in alignment with parenting and everything else. If you want to look legitimate in the people's eyes, you have to be able to understand that your words are going to be scrutinized. I always say that at this particular point in this spot our words are magnified 100 times over. So, example of modeling behavior, our officers respond to all sorts of calls where they don't get to pick and choose who they talk to. Whether it's the Proud Boys or the Black Panthers, whatever, they have to talk to that call for service. But we as leaders would act like we're going to pick and choose who we're going to talk to when it comes to having these communications out there. Our officers see that. And they look at that and like, okay, you're a hypocrite. You want me to engage and be out here talking, but yet still you want to have who's an in crew and who's an outside crew. A lot of the community activists, especially within my organization for the past leaders, were not talked to. But yet still we expect our officers to have conversations. We have to change this narrative and understand that we're being scrutinized at all time level from the standpoint of not only community, but within our own organization. And if we cannot walk a pathway that we want our officers to walk, we're not leaders. We're just taking space. So when it comes to really having, the reputation that you are going to be that type of leader, having those, uncomfortable conversations with individuals that, it's going to be, a little tough talk. We have to model that behavior. We have to embody that behavior. We have to be looked at as legitimate leaders to our people, especially when we start talking to the public, talking to our community, collaboration in a genuine, not just some like feel good, but actual true integrity type of conversations out there with our community.
Yeah, I think when you're having those conversations, to Chief Armstrong's point, when you're having those difficult conversations, one thing that people want is they want to make sure that you're going to have some equity in how you discipline people, how you hold people accountable. Too often we talk about accountability and we just throw it out there like it's a magic buzzword and that's going to take care of everything. What we have to understand as chiefs of police is sometimes you're going to catch up one of your really good officers that you love, who's a hard worker, who does the right thing most of the times, but they're going to step afoul sometimes too. And you got to hold them accountable just like you would one of your officers that aren't your high performers. And I think that becomes very challenging for some when they get in these positions. And to Chief Norman's point, getting out there, you got to be in the thick of it. When there's protests out in front of your police station, good, bad, or ugly, you got to be standing out there front and center, ready to take on those hard conversations on your territory for your men and women. Because if they don't see you out there, there's no way in the world they're going to believe you're going to stand behind them when things get tough. So, that's just a couple of things I was thinking about.
Thank you so much. Kind of piggybacking off of what you said, Chief Dixon, and everyone else, please feel free to chime in. You brought up another point too in terms of the protest and the heat, and really kind of, I know for me and Dale as line officers, navigating the emotions, the demand, the obligation, and the reality of I still have to protect and serve, whether it feels good or not. We still have to do our job regardless of what the climate is. What have you as a leader found to be helpful, productive, or needed to keep your officers motivated, especially now where we've seen a lot of almost not division, but there's almost been isolation or kind of this thing creeping in even more so within the ranks to try and divide or make people pick a line. What have you found to help keep your organization gelled as a unit and not allow outside to poison what's inside?
For me, it's been real talk. I'll tell you, there was a certain segment of my police department that did not understand while I was out there walking lockstep with the protesters, up front leading it. They did not understand that everything that people are calling for in police reform and police accountability isn't wrong. They're not wholly wrong at what we're talking about. This conversation is long overdue. But being able to have those conversations inside your police department to let people know and understand this isn't something that happened in 2020. Make no mistake about it. This path has been being laid for decades, and it has finally caught up to us. So you have to be able to sit down and have those very intentional conversations to let them know that there is a whole nother perspective out there that you've got to look at. And the same feelings that the four of us have are the same feelings that our police officers of color have when they're out there standing on the line. It gives you a bunch of different emotions. It gives you a completely different narrative for yourself internally. How do you keep going? How do you keep showing up to work every day when in some ways we represent the very thing that most of us believe, both good and bad, right? So it is just continuing to have those conversations, meeting with people where they are, and not always want people to come to the police department, but getting your line officers involved in those conversations as well.
Absolutely. I think that navigating these protests, one, I heard Chief Dixon talk about being out there. I remember during a protest last year, I was doing 18-hour shifts with my people as a commander of a large district. I only got paid for 8, but it was important for them to see me by them and showing appreciation that they're putting in long hours. I'm with you, shaking hands, talking with individuals. But on the flip side, now as a chief, I talk about the uncomfortable conversation that I tell people all the time. I'm a black man first, just who happened to wear a uniform. So I have a sensitivity to what's going on. I have an understanding in regards to the respect of the different races, of the different religions, gender, that we have to own and be able to be at the forefront or the point of the spear. Having those conversations and showing that, I'm not afraid to have those conversations in regards to, how do we I try to find ways that whenever I'm in front of a community activist group or whatever, what can we agree on? One thing that I think we all can agree on, no matter what circle you're in, is that no one likes bad cops. How do we get there? We got to decide what that looks like. But one thing that we can agree on is that a bad cop is not appreciated in any department.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you guys are all leaders. What's your leadership style? How did you develop your leadership style coming up through the ranks? How did you develop that?
Man, I would say for me, my leadership style is more of a democratic leadership style. Like I like to get people involved in a decision-making process, especially when the topic at hand is going to directly impact them way more than it's going to impact me. And that was ingrained in me because as I was coming up through the ranks in my career, I often felt left out. I often felt as though, the command staff, the executive team, like at the top, they were making all these decisions and they never talked to us. They never got our input on anything. And so that was something that always rubbed me the wrong way. And so it just became a part of, as I was working my way up and just thinking like, all right, man, when I get at the top and when I get in those positions, all right, I'm not going to be like that. Man, when I have the opportunity to get input or get some feedback from people, especially the people that are going to be impacted, man, that's what I want to do. And so that's primarily, how my leadership style is. But also for me, it really depends on the situation and what we're dealing with, because different situations call for different leadership styles. And sometimes I have the ability to have that conversation and get everybody's input. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes the only thing I can say is we go in this direction and I need everybody to go this direction right now. Now, once we get the mission accomplished, hey, I can come back and I tell you all day long why we had to go that direction and why we had to go that way right away. But sometimes you don't have sometimes you don't have the time to sit and have that discussion. And so, but if I have to do that and I have to give those orders and I'm not able to explain it in the moment, all right, I try to follow it up on the back end and explain, hey, this is what was going on and this is why we had to move like that. And it's just, having that communication piece. And I don't get it right all the time. And my people definitely let me know when I don't get it right. But I try to be very intentional, man, about maintaining that communication piece and keeping them informed as best as I can. But, with one chief, and no matter how many people that you have under you, man, you can't read their minds all the time of what they're thinking or what questions they have that they want you to speak to without them ever asking the question. And that's one of the challenges I've found as being the chief is, you think that you're doing a good job of communicating, and then all of a sudden somebody come out with a complaint about something and you realize like, all right, man, that was something that I didn't even think about. It wasn't even on my radar. And if they wouldn't have asked, I would have never known, or if it didn't come up. And so you recognize, how hard and challenging those lines of communication are, when you're sitting up at the top and it's just you up there.
Right. Anybody else?
I agree with that. I think you come in and I fancy myself a transformational leader. You come in, you believe yourself to be a change agent. You come in with all these sort of concepts and ideas about the things that you want to get done and how best to build your teams to accomplish common goals. And then you realize surely on the job that you have to be a little bit of all leadership styles. And obviously, the one I lean toward is sort of involving folks and being an influence upon them and being that transformational leadership to empower folks. But a lot of what Chief Dixon said is accurate, that if you're not careful, your message can get stale, and you'll find that you've missed opportunities to connect with your staff. You've missed opportunities to really put a positive impact on a certain initiative or a certain agenda. And you have to double back and figure that out, because you're not going to be, you're going to be someone's villain and you're going to be someone's hero. That's how it is. Law enforcement, it's not a monolith. Not everyone's going to buy into what you're selling, right? So being open to those conversations, being understanding that you do have to explain why, and when it concerns your decision making, and just being committed to the process of engaging with your staff as much as possible. And I think that was lost. The earlier generations probably didn't feel the need to do that. But this is a new day in law enforcement, as we can see. And if we're asking folks to get out there and risk their lives and put their lives on the line for the mission of the agency, and then the least we can do is make sure that we're taking every single effort to engage with them and make sure that our message is aligned. They're aligned with our message and the goals of the agency. So it's a tough job, and you definitely have to select one sort of leadership style, but you also have to be flexible to adopt others when necessary.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with just what was said before in regards to having multiple hats, whether it's transformational, whether it's, Democrat. Sometimes you have to, be type A, depending on the situation of, officer involved shooting or, dealing with a hostage situation, but you try to be as inclusive as possible. I like to subscribe to servant leadership. Also looking at from the standpoint of how do I develop and support my team to be the best that they can be. I hear that, and I saw somebody post, how do you continue to develop your leadership? I read a lot, go to a lot of trainings, whether it's John Maxwell talking about, great leaders ask a lot of questions, or reading, Stephen Covey in regards to that, you have to make trust deposits, or even Simon Sinek. I heard, Chief Collins talking about the why. I tell my team all the time, especially when you're at that high level, we have over 1,700 sworn, and about 600, civilian. We have to be able to be comfortable explaining our why so that people can understand what is the particular thought process behind this. It's not just kind of pulling it out of the sky or whatever. And at the end of the day, you got to go with it. This is what we have to do now. I want you to be treated as an adult, but sometimes you're not going to agree with the why. You're not going to sit there and have a great feeling. But we all know that leadership, people will have, if everyone loves you, you're not being a leader. So, you have to be able to, develop those who can, take over the helm. I know my days are twilight in regards to my career. So, looking at from a standpoint, how do I mentor those to replace me and to empower them, just as some earlier statements were made.
Absolutely. And real quick, let me bring up this comment from Tempest Perkins on Facebook. She says, as an African-American chief, how do you continue to grow and develop as a leader?
I just continue to immerse myself in getting as much training as I can. I follow chiefs across the country to see what they're doing, some of them on this call right now. The other two, definitely after this call, I'll be following things that they're doing as well. I mean, you can get nuggets of leadership from a lot of different ways, but you have to continue to push yourself. When you think that you have learned everything that there is to know, yes, and you've stopped learning, you've stopped living, you should not be leading, and you need to show yourself out, right? Yeah. So continue to go to trainings, but not just any card punch training. You got to be very selective. Make sure that what you're going to get is going to be something of substance, something of grit that you can take back and actually use. and keep your eye out on what's going on. You got to stay laser focused on what's happening nationally, because it doesn't matter if it's in Denton, Ferguson, or Milwaukee, it's going to hit all of us. So that's really important.
And I think another thing that's key, when you talk about growing as a leader, is you have to step outside your comfort zone or where you've always been and do some different things or some new things. Right now, a couple of things that I'm involved in is my local school district here. They're going through anti-racist training, and the school superintendent asked me to be a part of the change team. And so I'm one of the few outsiders in the school district that's a part of this change team. And so I'm going through this anti-racist training with them. And so my presence there is to contribute an outside perspective, but I'm also learning a lot and I'm gaining a lot from this, that I can bring back to my organization. I just enrolled and I'm doing a certificate program at the University of South Florida in diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So it's getting out and doing things like that. I hear comments at times, especially from, minorities, when you're talking about, diversity and inclusion, or you're talking about anti-racism, and people think that, just because being Black and we know what racism looks like, and, most of us have experienced racism in our life, that we don't have anything to learn about racism, that we don't have anything to learn about diversity and inclusion. And that couldn't be further, from the truth. And so, there are a lot of different avenues, in those spaces that we still have things that we can learn and we can pick up on. And so, those are some of the things that I try to do, is just try to look and see, where I can be exposed to something that even if I think I know about it, let me go check it out anyway to see, what I don't know, and what I can add to my tool belt, what I can add to my skill set, that will make me better and help me be a better leader. If I can be more inclusive and have a better understanding, of, some of my LGBTQ officers that work for me, some different things that maybe I can learn and I can attach and latch on to, that I can make them feel more comfortable, in interactions with them and different things like that. And so, it's just about, opening yourself up, to continuous learning is what we all need to do, because none of us know it all, and we can all get something, from the next person. And you just, as a leader, you have to understand that that's how you will be a better leader tomorrow, is you have to keep investing in yourself.
Yeah.
We have,
sorry.
So everything is amazing. I want to cut you off. We have a ton of audience questions, and I want to get them there. And we also have other leaders that are watching. So I have a few questions for you all. Going to one of the audience questions, you had mentioned earlier that oftentimes people of color get the difficult assignments. What have you all found to be successful in dealing with the stress of that, and what support networks have you all created?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that first, if you don't mind. For me, it's understanding that you never go into any situation alone. First and foremost, you have your family. If I'm a man of faith, so I always have that aspect going into anything that I do. And you want to lean on those folks, because they're the ones going to be the key components of whether or not you're going to be successful. Aside from that, associations are always great. I'm a part of several associations: International Association of Chiefs of Police, and NOBLE, which is National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. When you reach out and connect with folks, generally great things happen. We are so fixated on getting the job done ourselves. We all, if we admit it, we all have a little bit of that. We're intoxicated by that hero mentality that we can handle the weight and the burden of things on our own. And although that may be true and you may be successful in some areas, it really is much better when you have a group of people, you have that support system working around you. So, primarily for me, it's family, it's faith, family, and then it's the various organizations that are there to support you. And also it's the folks that you see doing this job, like Chief Dixon in Denton and Chief Armstrong in Ferguson. It's okay to reach out and ask. And Chief Norman in Milwaukee, it's okay to reach out and ask for advice. And I'm sure any of these gentlemen on this call will give you their time. I can tell you that any one of us will give us, give you time to kind of bounce ideas off of, to talk to network with, because no one can do this job alone. It's impossible.
I think as the chief, and appreciate what Chief Collins said, noble member also, I see you, Chief Armstrong. As a head of your organization, you have to be a relationship builder. I tell people all the time, you're the chief politician for your organization, meaning that you're the handshaker and the baby kisser. Getting out there, building relationships, and I tell people all the time, I want to meet you before a crisis or concern. Because if we have to meet at a crisis concern, we're already behind the 8 ball. Getting to know people, build those relationships, build those networks. I have a co-executive chief here who's part of the sheriff department. He's the he's the sheriff of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office. We talk on a weekly basis. And that helps in regards to navigating a lot of different challenges in our respective communities. He's the county, I'm the city. And that it keeps us, again, at the forefront of being a part of conversations and seeing what's on the landscape. We have to be able to have those conversations with everybody, anybody. Many times I'm going out talking to, again, community leaders on a regular basis, because it's not a matter of if, it's a when the crisis comes. And as leaders, we have to be ahead of that game. Otherwise, we're going to be challenged like, okay, where have you been when, all this time? You don't want to have that discussion. So when it comes to dealing with difficult situations, when you build relationships, you're able to have okay, let's circle back and rekindle the relationship rather than we're building it right now during a crisis or emergency.
No doubt. No doubt.
For Chief Norman, Chief Armstrong, and Chief Dixon, and Chief Collins, you, feel free to add to this. And I don't know if it's so much in the forefront, but with the difficult conversations and community relations, how, for the leaders that are watching and listening in, how are you all of you all navigating the defund the police movement, especially with the politics of that? And how are you handling the conversations where, at the end of the day, the politicians who are pushing this are doing it for motivation, regardless of what the outfall of that looks like? And I think Del and I can attest to, when we're having conversations in the street with people, defund is all over the place. They don't really understand the long-term implications maybe of what people are asking for, until someone sits down and breaks it down. Like, well, if you cut this is what this means. Is that what you really want? What have you all as leaders found to be a response that has brought better understanding, or a better, I guess, kind of clear the table up? Because I feel like as an officer, there's a whole lot on the table that really has nothing to do with anything, and a lot that they're trying to take away that impacts much greater than they really understand it to be. So if Chief Armstrong and Chief Norman want to jump in.
So largely, man, my take on the whole defund the police thing is 2 parts to it. So there's one part where you have, people who have done some homework, who have looked into some things, and they recognize where some of the inequalities are in the community as a whole. And they recognize a lot of the resources that the community is lacking. And so, their response to that is, okay, are there instead of using the police for everything that we use the police for, because I know all the chiefs on this panel will agree with me when I say that we use the police for way too many things in just about every community. And so instead of using the police for all of the things that we task them with, will those resources be better utilized elsewhere and in other community resources where we can get people the help and the resources that they need without, having the police always at the forefront of that? All right, I agree with that thought process. The only problem that I have as a chief is I know that I don't have any areas in my budget in my organization that can stand cuts, because we are already trying to get by with the bare minimum already. And so for that argument, the real issue is not defunding the police. You need to fund these resources. And I'm all about that, because those resources are desperately needed, in these communities. So that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is people that the only thing that they know are hashtags. and if they can't say a complete sentence without putting it in hashtags, and those are the individuals that are not informed, and I don't, I don't put too much stock in trying to have, invest that time and that energy in that conversation, because that's not going to get anywhere. And so, you have to invest your time, and as leaders, we have to invest our time, with the people that we can sit down and have that conversation with, and especially the people in your community. Because, all right, man, let's be real, man, the elected officials speak for the community, or at least that's what they're supposed to. And so, man, you got to have conversations with those community members so they understand, okay, if this gets cut, this is how this is going to impact you. And as a chief, my primary responsibility is to manage expectations. That I will never forget that. I got that from a chief one time when I was first coming up. And that's what he told me is, man, your job and your role is to manage expectations. And that's what we have to do. And so when there are things that's going out there that are going to be detrimental to your community, I'm not talking about it being detrimental to my police department. The police department is a small part of the community. So when I talk about these things, I don't talk about it as if they're mutually exclusive. We're all the same. This is one community. And so what's bad for the police department is bad for the members in the community, and vice versa. And so, when you're talking about things that you can see that it is going to have a negative impact on the community, I mean, you have to voice that. And you have to explain that to people. You have to get them to understand, what comes with that. There's consequences to some of these things. And now we don't control the money. And we understand that. So all we can do is just lend our voice and our expertise and our knowledge to the people that do control the money. At the end of the day, they're going to make the decisions that they make. And we have to work within that. And oftentimes, man, we play with the hand that we're dealt. And we survive off of that, man. And law enforcement, man, we know how to live with that. And we make the best of a bad situation a lot of the times. But most of us can't sustain cuts to our budget because they've already been cut and sliced, as thin as can be.
It's important in that context to talk about in regards to how to navigate that. And just like Chief Armstrong talked about in regards to managing expectations, I talk in regards to being an advocate in regards to the department. Too often, we as leaders with our type A personalities want to fight. And I say this, if you're going to fight, you're supposed to fight to win. There's things outside our control. The city leaders control the budget writing. They control the resources. All we can do is advocate for our resources for our respective department, talk about what it looks like in regards to what these choices will end up being, and being that subject matter expert for your slice of the pie. With this whole defund or reimagining, I'm willing to be at that conversation, but it is to put in okay, this is what is going to affect our resources and how we can respond, or what we're going to have to respond, is basically have some real talk time. Meaning that if this is the expectations, don't take away the money or reallocate resources, but you still hold me to the same standard that you had before those particular aspects were done. So it's a lot of conversation that's going to be raw and up close and honest. And we always say that the public will get the police department they want.
Real.
Part of managing those expectations is letting them know you can't just summarily move money out of the police department to start a program. You've got to have something to fill that gap. Because if we're no longer doing it and the new program's not stood up, who's going? And that's not an acceptable answer to the community that we're charged with keeping safe.
Right.
As Chief Armstrong said, it's not going to impact me personally, but it's going to impact my community. And that's what I care about. So meeting with those leaders, meeting with the advocates, meeting with their elected officials, and just letting them know you got to lay out the facts. It doesn't have to be controversial. It doesn't have to be argumentative. These are the facts. State law will not allow you to do this right now. If you want that change at the state level, have it change, and we can talk about moving money over to it. We can talk about standing up something to do this better, but you've got to have something to fill that gap. And if you don't, you're being short-sighted. You can already see around the country right now where initially these chunks of monies were taken away from public safety. Mm-hmm. And guess what's happening right now? You've got mayors going back to their councils asking for that money to be reinvested in the police department because they did it prematurely with nothing to fill that gap. So those are what I would be telling my folks.
Yeah, no
You
doubt,
know,
no doubt.
just to kind of add to what the chiefs have all said, which is all excellent information already. You know, there is no systems in place. Look, we're searching for this utopian society where there's less law enforcement and defund the police has become a sexy topic, and that we understand. And you have to be understanding that this is what the community is asking for. My fear is that we're moving way too fast without setting up structures, without sort of setting up things that have either gone away or have never been there institutionally to support a response to whatever the ailments of the community are. And so essentially, we're going to see increase in crime. We're going to see a lot of different things. We're seeing that already. And what it requires is a more thoughtful process to that. Now, what we see is local governments, they're rushing to get this stuff out. The city councils are passing things, and there's going to be a consequence to that. There's going to be a consequence to that, and we all are starting to see that now. But internally, I think the fact that we haven't been vocal enough as law enforcement to really try to explain things and really try to show where the issues are. So some of this is a lack of ownership on our shoulders historically, right? We're not taking lead on this. So anytime your house is a mess, either you're going to clean it up or someone's going to come in there and clean it up for you. And so we have to take ownership of some of the systemic issues that have existed, and we have to communicate these things effectively, which is a hard job. It's a hard job in today's climate, but we have to communicate better that we understand what the issues are. We don't want our officers to be therapists, counselors, social workers. We don't want that sort of thing as well. But unless there's the infrastructure to support the changes you are seeking, it's still going to fall back on us. We're still going to be asked to do these things, and the community is going to suffer in the long run. And so I kind of see it just dually, like some of it's us not taking ownership of it and not getting out ahead of it. And then a lot of it is governments are moving really quickly to address a community that's in a dire situation. And we haven't really fully evaluated what the consequences of these decisions are. But we're starting to see them, and we'll continue to see them.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick, producer Liz, if you could bring up that question about females in law enforcement. Vivi V on Facebook asked you guys, how do you empower women to succeed in a male-dominated field? How do you guys as chiefs? Yes. Elizabeth want to know that one too.
Allow me to jump out there, if you will. And I know I got some smart, heavy hitters coming behind me. So I'm just going to say this. The elephant is in the room. We are lopsided as an industry. It's somewhere around 14 to 17% women in our industry. And a lot of what we see is the issues that we're having is reflective of that. There's a lot of, we need more women, but we also need more diversity within the leadership ranks. You'll have a black female who's leading an organization, or a black male who's leading the organization, African American leaders, and their command structure looks anything else but that, or the process looks anything but that. And so we keep dancing around this conversation of diversity, and we do talk about how do we increase diversity? How is it a hiring issue? Is it a what is it? What is the issue? And so for me, it's a combination of mentorship and something that I heard from one of our chapter Women's Month panels is that we don't have a sponsor program. I'm sure each of us sitting here on this streaming process mentorship is great, but someone in the agency probably had to sponsor you to get to where you are now. Someone had to say, this guy's good to go. We should really start leaning on him and using him as leadership opportunities. Where our job as the African American males that are leading our organizations, we need to ensure that there's an equal effort to be sponsors for the women who are coming up through the ranks. I just fully believe that if we have agencies that reflect the community more accurately, then we'll have less issues because we'll have different perspectives to kind of push that leadership dynamic.
Yep.
and I'll follow up on that one. One of the things we have to find a better way of doing is improving our processes to where our processes, have the equity in them, for everybody just to have a fair chance in the process. Because oftentimes, that's where the disconnect comes is a lot of these promotional processes, were set up decades ago, and that's just, that's the gold standard. We don't know anything else, and I take full ownership. Like, I recently did a supervisor process, and I got a lot of complaints from people about how it went and what they thought about it. And so, all right, man, as the chief, man, I got to own that. And okay, let's go back, let's revisit it, and let's try to do a better job of it the next time, instead of me just putting out there, well, you just mad because you didn't get promoted, or what the case may be. Is like, we have to be open, to hearing that information and getting that kind of feedback, and be open to changing it. And one thing I think is important when we talk about, and so I believe that the question was about women kind of ascending into leadership roles, which is an important piece. But like Chief Collins mentioned, man, we have to do a better job of the profession being more inviting to women coming into the profession. And one thing that I look at is, all right, just take the uniform and what the uniform looks like. Okay. All right, man. There are some women that don't want to do this job just because they feel as though that they have to look like a male in the uniform, because that's how the uniform is set up. And when I got to Ferguson, one of my female officers asked me if I would approve a female tie for the uniform. I had never heard of a female tie. I didn't know what a female tie was. And so I'm like, all right, let me, give me a picture of it. Let me see it. Like, I don't know what it is. And so she shows it to me, and I'm like, absolutely. Like, I didn't even know it existed. And so, but just, approving something like that. And so now, man, I have female officers that, that have something that's they're more comfortable in, as leaders. We have to look at the opportunities that we have to change some things like that and improve some things like that, to where it may not, we may not understand or recognize the impact that it has, but just, man, our female officers getting something different, something that they can own, and something that is theirs, could go a long way in making them feel more comfortable in this space. And so now, what does it look like where, all right, you have a young lady that may be interested in a profession, and they see this female officer, and they connect with her as a female officer, because they have some different things, or the hairstyles. Like, we were very restrictive on what hair could look like, and all of those different things. And all right, man, if you get in a car accident and your car is on fire, do you give a damn what the officer's hair look like that's coming to pull your behind out of that car? No. Do you care if that officer has tattoos on their arms? No, you want somebody that can come pull your butt out of that burning car. And so, man, we have to look at, man, what are we trying to achieve? And we have to change a lot of the outdated mindset that's in the profession of, it has to look like this, it has to look like that. Hey, man, when you see me in my regular clothes outside the space, man, you would never think that I was a police chief. I got tattoos, I wear earrings, like the whole nine. Like, I'm not your traditional, I'm a young cat, I'm gonna have some Jordans on, and that's just who Jason Armstrong is. And that's who Jason Armstrong is always going to be. And so, man, we have to, so when we talk about the empowerment and things, like, people need to see that. I go to a lot of community events in my plain clothes, because I want people to see, like, yes, that's the police chief, and you can look like that, and you can be a police chief. And so, man, we have to get past just the decades and decades and decades of being stuck in, this is what law enforcement looks like, because the community is telling us that they're not happy with the end product of what they're getting from that. And so, man, we have to be the people at the table, man, making those changes and being at the forefront of what this can look like, and redefining, what a professional officer looks like, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I'll close out with, part of it is, you got to empower our female officers, let them know that they can do it. Oftentimes, they have not had anybody just come along and tell them, you can be an emergency management coordinator just as easy as Jason Armstrong can. All you got to do is put your name in the hat, go out, perform, and do it. Changing some of those antiquated things like nail polish, earrings, the ponytails. I have yet to see a female officer get slung to the ground by her ponytail, yet for decades we have had them wearing them in buns. Where have we opened ourselves up to start talking about little things that mean a lot. Childcare
Yeah.
issues, that keeps a lot of women from staying in law enforcement, much less progressing in it, because they don't have the flexibility historically to be able to take care of their kids and start a family and have a family and grow a family. It's things like that. We got to be more courageous stepping out on a limb and getting female officers that we identify they're going to be able to move up in the ranks, getting them the training, getting them the mentorship that they need while they're still patrol officers or sergeants. So when they get into those positions of leadership, when most of us are not around anymore, we've already got them a solid background and a pedigree that they can go out there and compete with the best of them.
And if I can just add one more note to this point, another thing that we have to do is build them up to prepare them for the hardships that they're going to face because they are a female. Because none of us can sit on here and say that that wouldn't happen or that's not going to happen, because we'd all be lying, because we know that that is the truth. And what comes with that is, if a female gets promoted over a group of males, then they automatically get labeled as the only reason they got that promotion is because they're female. Where you gentlemen, I don't know if you had the same experience, but I came up
Or
in a
they slept
predominantly
their
white,
way to the top.
yeah, or something along those lines. Where when I was up for a captain position in my old department, somebody who was a friend of mine, and so they felt comfortable enough saying this to me. But their comment to me was, "Of course you're going to get the captain position because you're the only black person that's up for it, and we've never had a black person in that position. So it's like they have to give it to you." Where my credentials and everything else didn't matter. That wasn't a part of the conversation. It was because of that one thing. And so, women coming up in the profession have to deal with the exact same thing. And that's a part of that growth and that mentorship is they have to be prepared for that part, because that is going to be, more times than not, the challenge that they're going to have to face and deal with.
And Dale and Elizabeth, I just wanted to add.
Wait now, Collins.
Sure. Go ahead, Chief.
Go ahead. Chief Norman, get in there. Get in there.
Is that we have to be intentional in finding those leaders. We cannot wait for people to come to us. We have to understand that diversity is our strength. We need to understand that we need to go out there. I talk to my commanders. I talk to them and say, who are you identifying under you who can be the next change agent, especially when you talk about from our female counterpart, but also diversity from our, all the different backgrounds we have in their job. Too often we are beholden to old ways, like Chief Armstrong talked about, in regards to we don't question our processes. And then we wonder why we get these certain type of products, especially that we default to what we know and not trying to change in regards to being a better department, a better organization, a reflective department. So we do have to look for those who are going to be those rising stars. And my best partners throughout my career have been female because of the certain talents they bring to the table, because that machismo stuff gets us all in trouble. So I think that it's incumbent upon us, especially as leaders, to model that behavior of, I'm going to go out and find and look for and develop and support those, especially our female officers, because it's a better department and it's a reflective department, not only for the organization, but for our community.
Right.
All right, now y'all talk.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate you, Chief. No, seriously, I just wanted to add one last thing. We it's not lost on me that this is a forum full of African American men. And I know I'm not only speaking for myself, but there are so many effective leaders that are women, African American women, just women, period. But I know a lot of African American women who are qualified, who are smart, who are capable right now, not tomorrow, that don't need development, that are capable right now. So it's important that we sponsor these women and give them the opportunity. Otherwise, we're losing out on the next level of police innovation. We're losing out on the next level of progress just by excluding them as a byproduct of the traditionalism that exists within law enforcement, and it's a male-dominated field. A lot of our counterparts see us and don't want us in these positions. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again: women have the hardest route in this job. They simply do. they're counted out from day one. And especially our sisters are. And so I am just fortunate to know a ton. One of my strongest mentors is a woman. My best partners have been women. Some of the smartest people that I've met in the industry have been women. And we do a lot of discounting as if they need a ton of help. No, some of the help they need is for us to just get out of the way. They need us to step aside and allow them to lead. So I think that was an important question. I'm happy you asked it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of these traditions that you talk about is because law enforcement organizations are traditionally paramilitary.
Yeah.
We get a lot of our stuff from the military. The way you dress, the way you're supposed to act, the way your hair is supposed to be, no tats. And even the military is getting away from a lot of that stuff. So I don't see why law enforcement agencies, we're not the military, first of all. So we don't need to be taking on those roles. But the military is getting away from it. So we should be getting away from it. So, law enforcement is a dangerous job. And as we know, Chief Dixon, you mentioned a trooper that was killed in your state and just passed away before the broadcast. And over there in Boulder, they lost an officer as well during that mass shooting the other day. Talk about what it's like to go through that as a chief of police, having to deal with a tragic situation in your department, in your organization. Go ahead,
Well,
Dixon, you can.
I'll go
there you
first, I guess. Nothing prepares you for losing an officer. Even having an officer critically wounded, nothing can prepare you for that. The October 2019, I was away at a training at the IACP in Chicago, and one of my officers was critically shot in the middle of the night. Getting a phone call at midnight when you're in a hotel in Chicago is not the place you want to be when you're told that one of your officers has been shot. Trying to scramble and find a flight home early the next morning to get back to rush to the hospital. What the last message that you got was, we're trying to hurry and get his wife there so they can say goodbye to him, is not something that you want to be pondering at 40,000 feet, 4 hours away. You've got to stand strong for your agency because everyone is looking for you. If you freak out, if you lose control, the rest of your agency will follow suit. You've got to always be the rock for everyone else. They want you standing up there. They want you standing tall, but they also want you to show a level of compassion. They want you to show that you're a human being as well. So with my officers, luckily he survived. He's still on a long road of recovery. He will probably never be a police officer again, but we're thankful that he went from where he was to where he is now. But there is nothing emotionally that can prepare you for that roller coaster of emotions, for the feeling of ownership that you put your cops out there on the street, that you are somehow responsible for getting them home safe to their families at the end of the night. And it's just a treasure trove of emotion that you have to work through. You've got to lean on your fellow chiefs. I am lucky that I have 22 other chiefs in the Metroplex that we have lunch one day a month together so we can do exactly what we're doing right here, because no one knows how lonely your job is except another chief. You can't find a number 2 or a number 3 in an organization to know that. So leaning on them for support is something you need to do as well.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Chief.
I just say in regards to officer wellness, one of the things, especially when you talk about 21st century policing, we have to ensure that we have a network for those moments. I'm really into officer wellness. We have a robust wellness team, a chaplain, those who are connected to a greater network within the state of Wisconsin in regards to being there for our officers mentally and physically. We have the shock of the incident. We had a couple of unfortunate officer deaths in past recent couple of years, but there's also the after effects that we need to be monitoring, and that we all know the dangerousness of not being treated or being taken care of in regards to it's displayed on the street or in the officer's home. So I know that for a lot of departments, they're either building or supporting, but as a police chief, you want to make sure that you have a robust team that is prepared for these moments, especially when that support needs besides all the negative stuff that we as a department have usually utilized, the alcohol, the prescription drugs, the negative behavior. So wellness is very important in regards to dealing with these particular sensitive situations.
Yep. Chief Armstrong.
And to follow up, the point that Chief Dixon made, where nothing prepares you for this, and it couldn't be more accurate and more true. Now, it hasn't happened to me as a chief, but when I was a commander at my previous agency, 2 of my officers were shot in the line of duty. And luckily, by the grace of God, they both survived. One was more critically injured than the other, and similarly, probably would never be able to get back out on the street, due to the injuries. But like another thing for me, that same week, I had a close family member passed away also unexpectedly, and those are the things that like the public and even in the profession, that we don't talk about a lot. Is all of the challenges and things that we deal with on the job in the profession, we still have personal lives, and we still have the same trials and tribulations that everybody else has in our personal lives. But like Chief Dixon mentioned, me as the leader of that team and of that unit, man, I still have a responsibility that I have to stand tall and I have to stand strong, because my people are looking to me for that guidance and that leadership. And man, I remember I was driving back from the hospital that day, and I knew, my team had been pulled from the road, and, so they had been relieved. And so they're just sitting in the room, just waiting for me to get back and tell them, just give an update, man, is he still alive, or what is the prognosis and stuff? And I remember walking into the station that night, just thinking like, man, what in the world am I going to say? Like there is no training for that. And that you really just have to rely on who you are as a person and what life has given you up until that point, for you to try to, connect with people and to try to give them some sense of just hope and comfort, in a moment like that. And one of the things that I remember that stood out to me, that, I wasn't doing it for any reason other than I felt this is just what was needed to be done, was, a couple of days after the shooting, group text goes out to my team, and it was the message about speaking with the shrink, and hey, man, it's time, but they weren't making it mandatory. It wasn't mandatory; it was voluntary. And hey, if anybody is interested, just reply, and I remember it said, reply to me directly, so nobody will see whether or not who wants to talk to the shrink or not. And I called immediately and I made my appointment. And then I replied all to that message thread. And I told all of my people, hey guys, man, my appointment is Friday at 12 o'clock. I got the first one. It's okay to go sit down and talk with somebody, man. It's okay to get help. And for, in our profession, the history of our profession, you got to be big and bad. You got to be macho. And that's all it's about. And nobody wants to look weak. All right, man, to me, that's not looking weak, man. To me, that's being strong, like recognizing, man, I just experienced something that was very traumatic in my life, man. I need to talk to somebody about it. And we have to have, man, more people in leadership positions that will push that narrative. And we have to get away from the whole, all right, man, there's something wrong with you, or that's not macho, or it's not this, or it's not that. Man, the well-being in our profession is at an all-time low. And we see that with the suicide rates in the profession being at an all-time high. And so we know we need to do some things differently, and we have to take a different approach and a different outlook on what mental wellness and well-being looks like for our officers.
No doubt. Real quick before we get another answer in there, Chief Collins, Ty Hunter Jr. on Facebook says, this is powerful to see such a panel of black chiefs handling major metropolitan cities. So appreciate that, Ty. He is a former guest as well. Go ahead, Chief Collins. You wanted to participate in that as well?
No, I think that was Chief Norman. But just to echo what everyone said here, I haven't experienced any losses as a chief. When I was in Arlington, we lost our deputy chief, and just the impact of that is just major for us. And so what Chief Norman spoke about and what Chief Armstrong spoke about is officer wellness, investing. I'm happy to see that a lot of departments and a lot of the executives are really leaning into the discussion on officer wellness. That is critically important right now. It is not popular to be in law enforcement right now. The suicide rates are alarming at this point, and it's a very tough job. We're shunned by the community we serve. We're ostracized a lot, and some of it's for good reason, but not every person who suits up and put that shield on is deserving of that sort of criticism. So we owe it to our members to sort of make sure that we are invested in their officer wellness. I like the idea of chaplain services. I love the idea of a robust physical fitness program. I love the idea of a mental health program, especially during the winter months. And so and also I love the idea of a robust financial empowerment program. So these are some of the concepts that I've been seeing around the country, and I'm so happy that we're leaning into that, and I hope that work continues because, as you all are aware, this is a finite job, and when it's over, we're seeing in droves, we're keeling over pretty soon after retirement, and there's also an increase in suicide, and it's because of the toll of the job. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents to it.
Yep. Chief Norman.
Oh, I already talked about wellness. Making sure that we have a robust, program. I know that I expanded under me in regards to having it in all the districts, having that particular type of building a relationship, and just as Chief Armstrong talked about, making this a comfortable situation. Expanded more than just officer involved, incidents. This is about the trauma that officers deal with. I mean, I'm hearing people talking about they worked in, for yourself, Dale, I believe, children crimes. Those are hard, rough experiences. And we have to be intentional. I know that we use it for our homicide teams. We use it for our violent crime. It needs to be more robust as best as we can. We use interns to expand it beyond just the psychologists that we have on staff. We bring in former officers who have become men of the cloth, women of the cloth, because it's that important in regards to that we deal with these traumas and things that we're going through, and we want healthy officers. We want officers who are in body and spirit going out there with the right mindset, because unfortunately we have not been doing a very good job of that, and we see that from the suicides, as I mentioned before. We have a number of unfortunate suicides within our department, and that we're still trying to be, and I say this in a general sense, tough guys. I'm good. I'm not going to be able to, put myself out there. I had to make some tough decisions of, unfortunately, putting officers on administrative suspension because going through some tough times. But, the unfortunate thing is, as leaders, we're kind of rocked in a hard place. You don't want officers to take their own service weapon and use it on themselves. Yet still, you don't want to stigmatize what they're going through. So dealing with these particular situations, it's real rough on the top spot because you have to make some tough calls. But we have to show our best foot forward of putting together programming and support in regards to officers dealing with these type of traumatic experiences, and what are we as leaders doing to support them, because any loss of an officer, whether it's from an officer involved shooting or someone who is lost because of their mental health challenges, drinking and things that come into play, is also a loss to the department.
Yeah. All right. And lastly, as African American chiefs, and Chief Collins, I know you talked about before that you kind of grew your department from where it was to a lot of sworn officers now. What can be done to kind of encourage other African American, other minorities into our profession, especially how much has been stigmatized for good reason? But what can we do? What can you guys do as chiefs of police to kind of encourage other minorities, African Americans in particular, into this profession?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with what the members of this podcast are already doing. We have to take on these leadership opportunities, and we have to allow the community to see us flourish. And even at times when we're dealing with struggles, they need to see us in these leadership opportunities. But what's most important to entice the African American community to a field where they already feel marginalized by the interactions there, is to really start to lead the conversation. We don't need to backseat drive anymore in this business. We don't need to allow others to tell our narratives. We need to get out ahead of it with honesty and the principles of integrity that we stand on. And I think a lot of the chiefs, all of the chiefs here tonight, have spoken to that. And we need to just continue that sort of fervent dialogue about the real issues and not make it adversarial. We've gotten really comfortable with being adversarial with the communities we serve for whatever statistical reason or whatever new wave of police thought. But we need to dial that back and really engage in the areas that are meaningful to the health and well-being of our officers and primarily the health and well-being of our communities. So I'm happy to see a lot of the guests you have on tonight are already doing that in their roles and positions, but we just need to see more of that and we need to get more vocal.
No doubt, no doubt.
You know, another thing that we have to do is we really have to look at, you know, how we're recruiting and where we're recruiting from. And, you know, luckily I have the benefit of being a graduate of the best HBCU in the land, North Carolina Central University. And so
I don't think
and so I figured somebody else was the HBCU grad. So I always got to lead with that we are the best. But just having that HBCU background and just knowing, you know, man, like what comes with that. You know, when I got here to the St. Louis area, like I said, I came from Atlanta. I had never been to St. Louis before. And so I didn't know anything about this area in the St. Louis region. And so the first thing on my list was, all right, man, is there HBCU here? And so I found, you know, man, we have Harris Stowe State University, you know, here in the St. Louis area. So I immediately made a connection with them and I go down there, started an internship program. And so, man, I had 2 interns from Harris Stowe, you know, within the first year of me being here. Some of you may have heard earlier in the year, there's another HBCU in Missouri called Lincoln University, and they just started the nation's first police academy based out of an HBCU. Well, guess what, man? My behind was down there 2 weeks ago speaking to their academy class right now and recruiting out of their academy class. And so, you know, having somebody that is a graduate of an HBCU, man, I could talk with them and I can connect with them on a level that, all right, man, I know their experience. I know what they're going through. Like, I know your financial aid didn't come through on time and you got to go stand in line and make sure you don't get dropped from your class. Like, you know, we have those lived experience. So it hasn't changed.
Have all your paperwork, otherwise you got to start over.
Exactly. Like, you know, man, I showed up and they gave my room away one year and I had to stay in a hotel. Like, those are just the stories that come along with going to school at an HBCU, unfortunately. But being able to connect with them on that level and then just speak to them. All right, man, I came from the same beginnings, but look where I'm at now. Okay. And so you're not less than because you're at an HBCU. And that's the message that we have to get across, you know, to minorities, you know, in some of these impoverished communities and some of these communities where we have, you know, the most crime and the biggest problems and all the challenges and all the obstacles. Is just because you're a product of that environment, it doesn't mean that you're less than. It just means that you have more challenges and you know, you have more obstacles that you had to overcome, but you can overcome them. And so, you know, we still have a place where we can go and we can recruit and try to bring people on. If we get to them young enough, where we can explain, now, look, man, you know, woman, man, there are some things that could hinder you from being able to get in this profession and do things and to have, you know, the career that you want to have. And, you know, you need to be mindful of that. And we need to educate them on that at a young age so they're not caught up in the system where it prevents them from being able to join and become an officer and just being intentional about connecting with those individuals in those different spaces where, you know, where we didn't see a lot of recruiting and a lot of, you know, resources and attention being paid to, you know, with us being in these positions and understanding, you know, how impactful and powerful that can be, you know, is what we bring to the table and how, you know, we're able to bring more people into the profession, especially now because it's needed more than ever.
Absolutely. Chief Dixon, Chief Norman.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, when you're having those discussions with people and letting them know about them coming from challenging backgrounds, not only does it better equip them, can you think of people that are more resilient, have more heart, more passion, more desire than people that come from challenging backgrounds. That's exactly what we need in law enforcement right now, especially in law enforcement leadership. And let's face it, we've been waiting for change to come for far too long from the outside. If you want change to happen, come be part of that change. Work your way through the system, promote, you can make more impact in your organization as a sergeant than I can as a chief of police. And anybody that's been a sergeant before knows that. But why stop there? Why not? Why can't you be the next chief of police in LA or New York or Boston or anywhere else? You're the only thing that's keeping you from chasing your dreams. So we got to make sure that these young folks believe in themselves, that we equip them better, we give them more knowledge to know what they're walking into. Nobody said it's going to be easy, but most of us haven't had easy lives coming up. You got to keep on. You got to persevere. You got to push through, and you got to push forward. So yeah, I think exactly what everybody else has said so far is we've got to be very intentional in where we're recruiting from. We have a number of HBCUs in Texas, and we have started hitting them. One of the challenges we have is the distance right now from where I'm at. I'm almost in Lower Oklahoma. So trying to get people to move up here from the Houston area or from out in East Texas sometimes can be a little challenging, but we're going to continue to keep pushing.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, I just believe, again, like been mentioned before, modeling the expectations of what this role looks like, being in those spaces is always refreshing to see someone's eyes light up or surprise being in a space that normally a chief has not been in or anybody from the police department has been in. We never know where we're going to spark interest from or who's going to be encouraged or inspired to get into this profession. I would not still be in this profession, but now I love what I do. And I believe that when we are modeling that and showing ourselves and being present, it really is. I mean, I'm just paying it, back in regards to what has been done for me. I'm a high school student and the district commander comes in who was a, black man coming in and speaking to my class. So the things that I do is just nothing but a reflection of those who have come before me and using this stage, this platform to have that speaker box, and so to speak, in regards to, yes, I came from a hard background and here I am. And I tell kids and I tell people all the time, if I can do it, so can you. And you never know what's going to be that spark in regards to that. Somebody says, because I can see it, I touch it, I can be it.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen. Man, this conversation we can go on. The time just flew. I mean, we could keep this going on for another hour, but I won't keep everybody watching and you chiefs here. I know you guys are busy gentlemen. So as we close out, let's give you guys some closing thoughts one by one. What do you want to leave our viewers with? Chief Dixon, we'll start with you.
I really first want to thank you, Dale and Elizabeth, for putting this together and having me on, especially with such a great panel. I've learned as much tonight about myself and about where we're at in policing as those watching. I want to just tell people out there that being a chief of police is one of the greatest accomplishments of my adult life professionally. But it comes with a cost. Leadership is lonely. You're not always going to be well liked. And if you're liked by everybody, you're not doing your job. But you have to remember that because people want to see you fail, that should be motivation for you to succeed. Keep pushing yourself. Keep pushing others. Once you make it at whatever level and whatever organization you're in, don't pull the ladder up behind you. Reach down and pull up some other people that are coming up, because at some point, Chief Dixon is going to be riding off in the sunset, and it's going to be time for the next generation to take over. So we got to make sure that we well equip and well prepare those coming behind us to lead organizations, because, I mean, the greatest part of this job is yet to be seen from the talent that we have brewing in all of the organizations on here.
Absolutely. Chief Armstrong.
Yeah, I just want to second what Chief Dixon said about, thanks for having me. And this has been an amazing conversation with all of you gentlemen and lady, Miss Elizabeth. Thank you for co-hosting, Dale. the biggest thing I want to leave people with is, especially, the individuals that's watching, that's in the profession, and, are still coming up through the ranks is, don't be afraid to challenge yourself to step out of your comfort zone and take on these challenges and these responsibilities. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a scary road. But the impact that you could have is invaluable. And that's what I hold on to. Me coming to Ferguson and me taking on a position of being the chief in Ferguson, man, in the profession, there probably isn't a scarier post or agency to take on because of what Ferguson has been through and what Ferguson means to some people. And I remember when I first got here, doing the interview, and a reporter asked me, like, why would you take this job? Like, this is the toughest chief job in America. And my answer to him was, man, I don't know how you came up where you came from, man, but for me, opportunities don't just fall at my doorsteps. And so, me being in this profession, man, I just don't have the pick of the litter to pick and choose where my opportunities are going to be. And so opportunities come, man. Hey, I have to kick down the door, and I have to make the best of the situation. And just know in the challenges that you're going to go through, they're just building you up. Iron sharpens iron. And that's how you have to look at it being a chief is, man, you are going to be tested, but just know that, man, all the challenges and all the tests that you're going through are building you up and preparing you for, things that you can't even imagine and things that you may not even be able to fathom are possibilities and opportunities that you'll have down the road. And so, yes, it's scary. Yes, it's taking a risk. But that's what life is about. It's the journey is what we have to hold on to in this profession. And lastly, if anybody that is watching this that is not a police officer and is interested in being a police officer, I have plenty of openings at the Ferguson Police Department. You can go to our website.
Look at you.
FergusonCity.com and fill out an application. If anybody is at an agency that they're not happy and they're looking to transfer, you can go to FergusonCity.com. And hey, man, I'm more than happy to bring you on because, man, we have some big things going on here in Ferguson. And this is one of those places in the country where, if you want to be impactful and you want to have a big impact and do things on at an ultimate level, you could do it here. And so, I'm always looking to bring on people that are interested in doing that and want to make that impact. So I always got to get that plug. We're high.
Love it. Yes. Chief Norman.
Again, I ditto everyone else's words in regards to thank you, Black and Blue. Appreciate the invitation. I was a little hesitant at first, but then again, I got a chance to see some of the podcasts. Like, all right, I feel this. The big thing I think in regards to us being in these leadership positions is being able to see ourselves there. Too often I hear so many people that I've come across in regards to not understanding their potential. That for us who are in these positions, someone mentored us, or, in the words of Chief Collins, somebody sponsored, or I was going to say I had a benefactor. We have to seek. We have to be able to speak up and talk to us, and that sometimes we might not know what you're feeling, what's on your mind. I think Chief Armstrong said that in regards to knowing, what's in your head. I've learned early that to be successful without a successor is a failure. Understand that we have a responsibility that we didn't get to where we're at by ourselves, that we need to be able to help those who are going to replace us. I'm in my twilight years myself, and I understand that it's a big lift to be able to bring more who are of our background, of our experiences, of our race, to come up with all others, the diversity that's out there. So we need to understand that, you want to be in this. Do you believe in yourself to be in this? What are you doing about it? I remember one time I was talking to one of my officers, like, I fell into being a sergeant. And the other one, I fell into being a captain. And you're chief, you probably just fell into that. I said, nah, it was all intentional. I said, look at my resume. Everything I did, every class I took, every networking I went to, the organizations I joined led to this point. What is your plan? how are you going to ensure that your success is being laid out in the best way possible? And not saying that's always going to be easy. You know, no one there on this panel can tell you that what we've done, how we got there, how to remain there has been easy. But do you have a plan? Do you believe in yourself? Are you making those sacrifices? Because leadership is all about sacrifice. Studying, networking, going to these conferences, you know, being out there, make yourself known. So I will say this much. It is for all who desire it, the potential's there. You know, there's thousands of departments out there. You have to seek it. You have to speak on it. You have to step up. We are all open to being a part of that journey. To show you, I share anything. I don't believe in keeping any secrets. And I think it's important for us to realize that, you know, we're not unapproachable. You know, hearing that we dress down, you see me, you know, I'm a man or, you know, just a person just like you. So I think that for those who are in the profession, please seek, please, you know, work on, you know, the improvement, the self-improvement. I will say this, if it's about the money, you're going to be very disappointed because it should be about service. It's about being at a higher level because there's no amount of money that will pay you for this type of stress and the stuff that you go through. And for those who are not in the biz, this is a noble career. I'm very proud of the men and women who I represent and who I share these streets with, and that do not allow those small examples to be the narrative out there because there's a lot of unsung heroes out there. I work with them every day and I go around and I thank them every day to show the appreciation that the real boots on the street are the men and women on the front lines. I'm just a paper pusher. So I appreciate again being here, and I hope this was encouraging for those who watched.
Absolutely. And real quick before you speak, Chief Collins, I want to say, Chief Armstrong, you started something there in the comments on the side. We had San Diego PD's hiring, Fayetteville's hiring. Who else was on there? NYPD's hiring.
Everybody started putting their shout out. So we want to encourage everyone, please take this opportunity to pursue your career in law enforcement, get a mentor, jump in.
Absolutely.
But everybody see where it started. It started with Ferguson, like most other things. So hey, come on board to Ferguson first.
Yes.
Chief Collins, come on, man.
Your road can start in Ferguson as long as it ends in Denton.
All right, gentlemen. All right. Let's keep this moving. Chief Collins, go ahead.
Wow, what an amazing night. Thank you so much, Dale and Elizabeth. We appreciate you bringing us on here. I am appreciative of being a part of the panel. I have so much respect for all of the panelists. Guys, if I'm not following you already, I will be following you. I've learned so much. I've taken a lot of notes tonight. Mainly that it's okay to to rock my J's, to rock my Jordans. That's important. Also,
if you can afford them.
Every once in a while, Chiefs lie because Norfolk State University is the best HBCU of all time. So I just wanted to get that out there. Behold the green and gold. But for our viewers and our listeners, if you are considering joining this noble profession, we need you. Your community needs you. When you see these African American men or women in uniform that look like you, understand that we need you. That's the only way this thing works, called America, is that if we put aside our doubts and our fears and our stigmas and begin to understand that in order to change things, we have to be that change we're looking for. My second message is for those who are in uniform that are working their way up the ranks, and it's tough and it's hard and you don't see the end of the tunnel. We understand. We've been there. We've dealt with those issues. There are issues at our level that we can't even begin. That'll be a whole nother podcast if we started to talk about that.
Right.
But we're here for you. We're in service of you. One of the panelists said servant leadership, which is critically important for everyone to understand that we can't do our job. The people who work for us are our number one asset, and we cannot do this thing without you, period. And the last thing, for any executives out there who feel isolated, who are not a part of an organization or anything that sort of gives them that feeling of solidarity or have anyone to lean on to, you're not alone. anyone in this position that's chosen this executive leadership gets it. We get it. Reach out to us. We're happy to give up our time. And to everyone here tonight that made it such a great conversation, I wish you health and blessings and stay safe. And you are close to retirement, Chief Norman. So I hope you see that through, and good luck to you, sir. So that's all I got, Dale. Thank you.
Yeah. Don't put him out the pasture before he's ready, though.
No, of course.
I got options, my brothers.
Yes. I love this conversation. I loved it. This was good stuff, and I hope everybody out there enjoyed it. If you do, we got more conversations like this. Like I said, like and join us, like, subscribe, all that. Black and Blue US. We here, gentlemen. We appreciate you. Thank you for coming on, and let's do this again. This was real fun. This is real fun. All right.
Thank you all so much.
Yes. Wow, Lizzie, that was some good stuff, wasn't it?
Listen, I feel empowered again. I feel changed. The doors of the church are now open. Is there one?
Yes.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.